Every morning she cut across his lawn like it was hers, until one day the bush bit back. Behind the leaves hid concrete, a camera, and a plan. When her SUV crashed, she called fake cops and forged a warrant. But what she didn't know, he was watching, recording, and he was ready.
I never imagined that owning a modest slice of California land would turn into a daily battle against a Cadillac Escalade with a superiority complex. But here we are. My name is Thomas Morgan, and all I wanted was a quiet life, a dog who wasn't afraid of luxury vehicles, and a lawn that didn't look like a monster truck event had passed through it every morning. My property sits right outside a gated neighborhood ruled by an HOA with the iron fist of a dictatorship disguised as pastel-colored newsletters. The reigning monarch of that HOA is Karen Henderson, a woman who believes stop signs are suggestions and property boundaries are theoretical. Every morning, at roughly the same time, she barrels down the road in her shiny black Escalade, spots the slight gap in my hedge, and cuts across my lawn like she's reenacting a scene from an off-road commercial. She claims it saves her valuable time, though I've timed her route. It saves maybe 12 seconds. Apparently, being HOA royalty makes those 12 seconds sacred. I have tried everything polite. Signs saying private property. Ignored. A friendly wave and request to please take the actual road. Answered with a snort, and the words, "Thomas, you should be grateful I bring charm to this dead end." When I finally raised my voice, she rolled down her window and called me a tantrum-throwing loner, with no understanding of community spirit. This, while trespassing on my land. The worst part? I cannot even install a proper fence. According to the HOA, which I am not a part of, a tall fence would disrupt visual harmony with the neighborhood aesthetic. Translation: Karen likes the shortcut. HOA rules do not apply to me legally, but they keep filing complaints with the county to stall every permit I request. Apparently, bureaucracy is their favorite weapon. My dog, Captain, almost ended up a hood ornament when she decided to shave a bit more time by cutting the corner faster than usual. She honked at him like he had offended traffic law, and I swear Captain has hated SUVs ever since. The damage is growing. Tire ruts carving deeper into the grass, chunks of earth thrown aside like confetti. One morning, I stepped outside and found a bit of expensive chrome trim lying in the mud. I picked it up and stared at the thing, wondering how someone could value their convenience more than someone else's property. A neighbor from the HOA approached me once, eyes shifty, voice lowered. "We tried to stop her," he whispered, "but she's vindictive." His fear was real and pathetic. The woman runs a suburban cabal based on lawn height intimidation and scrapbookable threats of fines. They all bend to her because she knows how to ruin lives with paperwork. But not me. I have worked insurance law for more than 15 years. I survive on details, loopholes, and documenting other people's stupidity until a jury sees it as clearly as a security camera. And I was tired. Tired of repairing my yard. Tired of being mocked in my own driveway. Tired of the HOA treating me like a trespasser on my own land. So I stood there, looking at the battered hedge and my dog sniffing a fresh tire track. An idea crept in. A simple, satisfying, entirely legal idea. If I couldn't build a fence, I could build something that didn't look like a fence at all. A boundary she'd never see coming. A little surprise for the queen of shortcuts. And I smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Because I already knew exactly who could help me build it. The decision settled in my chest like a warm stone. If Karen wanted to play demolition derby with my yard every morning, then the least I could do was give her something worthy of the sport. Naturally, I needed a co-conspirator. Someone who understood structural integrity and enjoyed petty revenge disguised as civil engineering. Luckily, I knew exactly who to call. Eric Morales and I met over a decade ago while we were both testifying in a fraud case. He as a transportation safety engineer, me as the insurance guy trying to look smarter than everyone else in the room. We bonded over whiskey and our mutual love of watching the guilty stumble over their lies. If Batman ever recruited an engineer, the man would be Eric, and he owes me a favor or two. When I told him the situation, he didn't even let me finish my rant. He just grinned and said, "So, when do we start?" We walked along the edge of my property that afternoon, Captain following like a shaggy foreman supervising the job. Eric crouched down, poked the soil, measured the width of the tire tracks with a small metal scale he conveniently kept in his jacket. "She hits the same line every time," he said. "Predictable pattern. Perfect for an intervention." "What kind of intervention?" I asked, pretending I didn't already love the wicked glint in his eye. "A concealed static obstacle with grounded reinforcement," he replied, "solid enough to stop a tank. But we'll make it look like gardening." He paused. "You ever wanted a nice decorative bush?" That was how the Green Boomerang Initiative was born. A concrete block reinforced with rebar, buried and shaped into a gentle mound, layered with soil, freshly planted shrubs, and, as the pièce de résistance, a discreet statue of a stone owl perched above like a wise witness to suburban insanity. Inside that owl, a tiny GoPro, always watching, always recording. We spent days planning. Not a single bolt or grain of cement went in without a permit filed through the county under the designation Erosion Prevention and Wildlife Safe Landscaping. The government loves fancy wording as much as the HOA hates when someone knows more rules than they do. Eric wired the interior with impact sensors that would trigger the camera the moment anything heavier than a determined raccoon hit it. He even named the system in my home network SOD Protector 1. Clever, but subtlety is not his specialty. Every night afterward, I replayed footage of Karen's Escalade cutting through my yard like a migrating bison with a luxury leather interior. She did it without hesitation, with the smug grin of someone who had never heard the word consequences. On day 12 of surveillance, as dawn filtered through the trees, I opened the camera feed just in time to see her headlights. She accelerated as usual, wheels kicking up dirt, as if my property offended her existence. The moment her front tires hit the disguised barricade, the world seemed to pause, and then the SUV smashed into the bush with a magnificent crunch. The sound of cracking plastic and airbag deployment carried across my lawn like music. The stone owl never blinked. I stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching silence settle over her now sad vehicle. Karen stumbled out, hair disheveled, lipstick smudged into a caricature of confidence. She stared at the damage, then at me, and shouted, "You'll pay for this!" As if on cue, 2 black SUVs rolled up to my driveway, each door marked with a logo I had never seen. DT. Department of Traffic Control. Except, the Department of Traffic Control doesn't make house calls for a single car collision on private property. 4 men stepped out in matching black uniforms trying too hard to look official. The kind of people who shop for authority on clearance. One of them, a tall guy with a shaved head, squinted at me before his eyes widened. "Tom? Tom Morgan?" he asked. I frowned, trying to place him. Then it clicked. We'd met at a transportation liability conference a couple of years back. His name was Alvaro, a freelancer now, and this was not a government job. "You're kidding me," he muttered, looking at the broken Escalade. "Karen called us for this?" Karen stormed over, waving a sheet of paper like it was Excalibur. "This property contains an unapproved structural hazard. I have an official order. They are authorized to intervene and remove the threat." Alvaro snatched the paper from her hand, scanned it, then looked up at me with the exhausted expression of a man trapped in a live comedy show. "This document isn't registered anywhere. It has a fake case number." He turned to her. "You forged a department order? Seriously?" Karen stood there, sputtering like an overheated kettle. Her entourage exchanged glances, decided they did not get paid enough for felony accusations, and silently retreated to their vehicles. Alvaro pulled me aside. "I don't want to be in this mess. I'll email you what I know." He shot me a sympathetic look and left. Karen, still wild-eyed and furious, pointed a shaking finger at my bush. "This is far from over, Thomas," which was adorable. Because for me, this was only the beginning. Karen didn't leave the scene like a defeated warlord retreating to her fortress. No, she lingered in my driveway, pacing in broken arcs, shouting into her phone with the fury of a woman who just lost an argument with a shrub. Her Escalade sat dead behind her, airbag deployed, front end crumpled, and one of the side mirrors hanging like it had tried to bail mid-crash. She was calling every number in her arsenal: the HOA board, her lawyer, someone named Tina from Community Compliance. Meanwhile, I sat calmly on my porch, coffee refreshed, and Captain resting at my feet, enjoying the spectacle with the zen of a dog who knows justice when he sees it. That night, I received a letter, hand-delivered, not mailed, with the HOA's hideous emblem at the top, and way too many words in bold. It was a cease and desist. According to their investigation, I had installed an unauthorized danger to the community in the form of a concealed obstruction disguised as landscaping, with intent to injure. Now, I'd dealt with laughable threats before. This one, however, was a masterpiece of suburban legal theater. They even attached a grainy photo of my bush, encircled in red like it was a crime scene. I almost framed it. The next day, Karen returned. Not to apologize. Not even to inspect the scene. No. She came back with her attorney, who looked like a taxidermied raccoon in a polyester suit. They announced they were filing a lawsuit for reckless endangerment, property damage to her car, and, my favorite, emotional sabotage. "You've traumatized her," the lawyer claimed. "She suffered whiplash and a psychological event." "I saw her doing yoga the next morning," I said, "on Instagram." "Downward dog doesn't scream whiplash," Karen interjected, her voice sharp enough to sterilize the air. "That contraption was a death trap. I could have died." "You were going 30 on private property," I replied calmly. "Into a bush. That had a sign and a fence. That your tire marks destroyed, repeatedly, on video." That stopped the lawyer cold. "Video?" "Oh, yes," I smiled. "You see, the decorative owl you nearly ran over has a tiny camera inside, and it's been watching for 12 days. Captured every single violation. Date-stamped, geotagged, audio included." Karen's face went pale, then blotchy red, a stunning showcase of biological betrayal. Her lawyer coughed and asked if we could resolve this amicably before the courts get involved. Too late. That same afternoon, I submitted a full package to Karen's insurance company. VIN number, footage of impact, terrain analysis, GPS route overlays, and the pièce de résistance, Footage of Karen admitting on day 3 to her friend Becky, "Hi Becky," that cutting across Tom's yard is way faster than that dumb loop around the gate. The same friend who laughed and said, "What's he gonna do? Call the grass police?" Spoiler alert, Becky. No need. The insurance companies are scarier. I didn't stop there. I sent copies of the footage to the local sheriff's department just to be proactive. I've seen enough legal dumpster fires to know what happens when HOA drama escalates. Someone eventually screams, "But no one warned me," while sobbing on a courtroom bench. The next morning, I got a knock at the door. Michael Henderson. Yes, that Michael. Karen's husband. I hadn't seen him in person since the HOA's 4th of July pancake brunch, which he spent looking like a man who wanted to drown himself in syrup. Now he stood on my porch with hands in his pockets, eyes tired but sharp. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. I let him inside. He didn't sit. "I didn't know it was you," he said. "Back when I helped install those sensors for the erosion project, I had no idea they'd end up stopping my wife's tank." I raised an eyebrow. "You helped wire the impact system?" "Just the framework," he shrugged. "Didn't know the client was you until she brought home the footage. Tried to throw it away. I pulled it out of the trash." He placed a USB stick on my table. "Everything I helped design. Plus, she's been deleting HOA emails. Some legal stuff. Thought you might want it." "You're turning on your own wife?" He laughed, short, bitter. "She's been turning on me for years. This just made it obvious." I didn't say thank you. We weren't there yet. But I nodded. He left without another word. By evening, Karen's lawyer had gone quiet. Her insurance had reached out for mediation, and one of her HOA board members anonymously emailed me apologizing for not speaking up sooner. Apparently, Karen wasn't just queen. She was tyrant, and now her court was crumbling. And through all of it, the stone owl watched, silent, stoic, ready for court. The court summons landed in my mailbox 2 weeks later, folded too tightly and stuffed into a cheap manila envelope with a badly smudged HOA return address. Classy. The accusations were as bloated as Karen's Escalade. Reckless endangerment, property sabotage, emotional distress, and unauthorized modification of natural terrain. That last one made me laugh out loud in the middle of my driveway. Naturally, I responded by filing a countersuit. For trespassing, repeated property damage, harassment, and attempting to enforce HOA regulations on a non-member. I also included a fun little addendum: submission of falsified documents in a quasi-legal capacity. Thanks to Michael's USB drive, I had everything. Internal HOA emails showing Karen manipulating vote records, instructing board members to keep the HOA unified for optics, and even one message to the HOA's landscaper stating, "That lunatic next door can't do squat if we say it's beautification." That one was particularly helpful. By the time the court hearing rolled around, my legal team had a nice, thick binder labeled Karen-ageddon, and I made sure it had tabs. Karen arrived at the courthouse wearing head-to-toe beige and a neck brace that would have made sense if it weren't for the fact that she'd been caught on camera playing pickleball just 3 days earlier. I know because my attorney downloaded it from her Facebook page. That moment alone nearly derailed the case for her. Her new lawyer, who looked like he billed by the eyebrow raise, argued that the Bush barricade had been constructed with malicious intent. It was designed to lure my client into an accident. The judge, a stiff but fair man with a tendency to clean his glasses whenever someone said something particularly idiotic, paused, leaned forward and asked, "Are you implying the defendant installed a disguised shrub to weaponize his yard?" The lawyer nodded solemnly. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at me. I smiled, then stood. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to submit a 12-day compilation of video footage showing the plaintiff, that's Karen, cutting across my property, ignoring multiple posted signs, including a verbal warning from me, which I've also included on video, along with her own words, in which she says, and I quote, 'What's he gonna do? Grow a bush at me?'" The courtroom chuckled. The judge did not. He just said, "Proceed." We played the tape. Every infraction. Every roll of the Escalade's tires across my lawn. Every smug giggle. Every insult hurled in my direction. And finally, the glorious crash. A ballet of entitlement meeting inertia. Karen's lawyer objected, claiming the footage was obtained without consent. My lawyer reminded him that recording on one's own property with clear signage posted is entirely legal under state law. The judge agreed. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. I submitted a certified report from Alvaro, the ex-DTC contractor Karen had called to impersonate a traffic enforcement squad. He provided a sworn affidavit that Karen had given him a forged departmental order, complete with a fake case number. He'd also included screenshots of text messages from her asking him to look official and just make it look scary enough to shut him up. The judge rubbed his temples. And then Michael took the stand. He testified, under oath, that Karen had ordered the removal of HOA records that contradicted her version of events. He confirmed her unauthorized tampering with community voting procedures, and when asked why he was cooperating, he simply said, "Because my wife thinks HOA power overrides state law, and because Thomas is right." It was quiet for a full 5 seconds after that. Karen didn't look at him once during his testimony. She just stared at the table, her face stretched tight, her expression unreadable. After 2 full days, the court ruled decisively in my favor. The judge found that I was within my rights to protect my property from repeated trespass. The structure I'd installed was fully legal, properly permitted, and even beneficial to local erosion control. Karen had forged a legal document and misrepresented herself in an attempt to coerce me. HOA had no authority over my land and acted outside its jurisdiction by issuing me threats and attempting enforcement. Then came the cherry on top. Karen was ordered to pay full restitution for damages, including the cost of my lawn repair, legal fees, and a civil penalty for the fraudulent documents. But that wasn't all. The court also ordered a temporary audit of the HOA, mandating that all communications, financials, and elections for the past 3 years be reviewed by an independent firm. Karen was formally suspended from her position pending the outcome. She didn't say a word on the way out. Her lawyer walked 3 paces ahead of her. Michael stayed behind to shake my hand. "You didn't just beat her," he said. "You woke everyone else up." He was right. By the end of that week, anonymous notes started appearing in my mailbox. Notes from HOA members. Notes of thanks, of apology, of people finally realizing they'd let a tyrant speak for them. As for the bush, I'd had it re-landscaped slightly, a bit more stone, a few extra wildflowers, and a small sign in front that read, "Community Protected Zone. Trespassers will be botanically educated." So far, no one has challenged it. It didn't take long for Karen's empire to start crumbling once the court transcript hit the local press. The moment the judge uttered the words fraudulent documentation and overreach of authority, the whole HOA structure she had weaponized started shaking like a termite-infested gazebo in a hurricane. First came the news stories. At first, small blogs. Local HOA president loses lawsuit over secret shrub trap. Cute titles, nothing major, but then one local ABC affiliate ran with it. HOA queen accused of forging government order in property feud. That got picked up fast. Suddenly, my inbox was filling with requests for interviews, podcasts, even a true crime YouTuber who thought the case was like Aaron Brockovich, but with hedges. But I had no interest in media. I had work to do. I filed an additional suit, this time not against Karen directly, but against the Wartour HOA entity itself, for attempted enforcement on non-jurisdictional land, unlawful use of private security personnel, and harassment. My lawyer, God bless the man, prepared it like a surgical strike. HOA board members started scrambling. Some stepped down quietly. Others tried to distance themselves publicly, claiming, "We were never really on her side," which was funny, considering how many of their signatures had been on the threats they sent me. Then came the fallout that truly hurt Karen. And not in a courtroom. Her Escalade, the rolling monument to suburban excess, had been registered under her company's fleet lease. She was the executive director of a mid-sized PR firm that specialized in brand integrity and crisis communication. Ironic, really. After the accident, her insurance company began combing through the details and found that the SUV had been used outside of approved business zones during non-business hours for unauthorized purposes. Combine that with the public legal loss and forged documents in court, and suddenly, Karen wasn't just a legal liability. She was a corporate scandal waiting to implode. Her company's board held an emergency meeting. She was put on indefinite leave. The next morning, within a week, she was terminated with cause, no severance, no benefits, and a pending claim to recover damages for reputational harm to the company. I got a leaked memo from a friend in HR that included phrases like gross misconduct, irregular use of corporate property, and executive-level ethical breach. Her Escalade, repossessed by the leasing company. HOA members, now fully aware of her collapse, began telling stories. One neighbor shared how she'd threatened to report his wife for illegal window treatments. Another said Karen once fined her for planting roses in the wrong hue. Not within palate. My mailbox turned into a community confessional. And in the midst of it all, Karen tried, desperately, to save face. She issued a statement through a local blog accusing me of waging a digital smear campaign and manipulating community sentiment through misinformation. The blog took it down within hours after I emailed the editor the court documents, footage, and her Facebook post captioned, "Taking the shortcut again. LOL." Then came the best part. The insurance company finally closed their investigation and declared full driver liability. Their final report stated unauthorized vehicle use, repeated trespassing onto private property, collision with a fixed object designed for terrain protection, evidence of negligent behavior over multiple incidents, claimant attempted to misrepresent liability, the cherry on top. They denied her entire vehicle damage claim, citing her breach of lease terms and intentional risk behavior. Not only that, but they awarded me compensation. For the entire cost of landscaping, the GoPro setup, time missed from work, and, wait for it, emotional distress. They wrote me a check, a real one, with too many zeros for a bush. Michael, still legally her husband, though clearly on a new trajectory, showed up on my porch one morning. "She's moved in with her sister," he said. I've started the divorce paperwork." I didn't ask why. He looked free. I poured him coffee. He drank in silence. He finally added, "Thanks for making it about the law, not vengeance. She needed to be stopped. But this way, people learned something." I nodded. He left. I went back to pulling weeds. Not long after, I received a letter from the county planning office. Apparently, after reviewing the court ruling and my original documentation, the bush barricade was now officially classified as a minor architectural protective structure with native flora integration. In short, the county had approved the bush. It was now a legally recognized object of utility and landscaping aesthetics. I had turned a trap into a monument, a symbol of quiet, calculated resistance. The HOA, humbled and audited, offered to enter into a peaceful neighborly understanding. I declined the meeting. I had what I needed: peace, a repaired yard, and the sound of silence every morning, where once there had been the roar of Karen's engine. Captain no longer flinched when cars drove by. The grass began to grow back, and the owl, still perched, still recording, got a little gold plaque at the base, courtesy of Eric. It read, "Guardian of Property Rights. In Shrub We Trust." The moment the story hit the evening news, everything changed. A local anchor with perfect teeth and too much hairspray stood in front of a still shot of Karen's totaled Escalade, gesturing toward the dangerous bush like it was a murder weapon. The headline read, "HOA President Loses Power After Crashing into Legally Permitted Shrub. Local Resident Fights Back." They interviewed me in front of the owl statue. I wore my nicest flannel and made sure Captain was in frame. The reporter asked if I had any regrets. I smiled and said, "Only that I didn't plant roses on it." The clip went viral. Then came the op-eds, the podcasts. HOA watchdog groups latched on like wolves to a stake. I was invited to speak at a local council meeting on homeowner rights. Someone on Reddit made a meme of the stone owl with laser eyes, and the caption, "Ho this, Karen." But the real satisfaction didn't come from likes or follows. It came from the slow public collapse of a system that had long operated in the shadows of suburban politics. The independent audit of Karen's HOA uncovered years of irregularities, funds unaccounted for, votes that didn't match records, contracts awarded to preferred vendors, including Karen's cousin's landscaping company, which billed over $70,000 a year for decorative consistency inspections. Apparently, consistency costs a fortune. The county board initiated a full review of 7 HOAs in the area, citing mine as the catalyst. A prosecutor opened a case file. No charges yet, but the words "criminal investigation" started floating around neighborhood barbecues like smoke from a grease fire. I didn't gloat. I just watched. One of the best moments came during an emergency HOA meeting, now open to non-members as guests of transparency. I was invited, awkwardly, and sat in the back row wearing sunglasses and eating a bag of Skittles. The new interim HOA president, Mrs. Delgado, a retired teacher with no tolerance for nonsense, stood at the front with a clipboard and steel in her eyes. "We are here," she said, "to vote on amending Article 14, boundary compliance, and we are also here to apologize." She turned, looked directly at me, and said, "Mr. Morgan, we acknowledge that this association attempted to interfere with your legal property rights. On behalf of this board, I say, we were wrong." Polite applause followed. I nodded once and went back to my Skittles. In private, Mrs. Delgado approached me with a manila folder and said, "We'd like to formalize a boundary truce, a memorandum of non-interference. You sign it, we leave you alone. Forever. I scanned the document. Clean. Concise. Signed it with my lucky pen. Captain pawed the folder for approval. Meanwhile, Karen had disappeared from the neighborhood completely. Rumors varied. Some said she moved in with a cousin in Phoenix. Others whispered about a rebranding campaign in Arizona. One neighbor claimed she saw her working at a yoga studio under the name K. Rin. I didn't care. Her throne was gone, her empire reduced to HOA compost, and her voice was no longer echoing in my inbox. But the story still had roots. A small legal nonprofit, the Community Landowner Defense Fund, reached out and asked if I'd help them create educational materials about property rights and HOA overreach. I agreed, gave a few interviews, told people about how a shrub and a camera saved my sanity. One night, Eric came by with beer and a roll of parchment. "What's that?" I asked. "Blueprints," he said, unrolling them dramatically. "For the upgraded version of the Bush. I'm thinking pressure sensors, license plate capture, maybe a sprinkler defense system that detects aggression." I laughed. Let's wait and see if anyone's dumb enough to try again. We drank on the porch, looking out at the lawn, green, whole, unscarred. Captain lay between us, snoring like a freight train made of fur. And the owl? Still watching, still recording, still undefeated. Spring rolled in like a peace offering. The grass was thick and green again, stubborn weeds no longer daring to breach the lines of my lawn. My morning coffee ritual had become quiet, uneventful, and pleasantly boring. No tire marks, no honking, no queen barreling through in her land yacht like she was late for a parade in her own honor. Karen was gone. She never said goodbye. No handwritten letter, no final complaint to the HOA. Just vanished. Her house went on the market, and within weeks it was sold to a nice retired couple from Oregon who showed up with homemade cookies and asked if the owl statue came with the property. I told them it stayed where it was. A local landmark now. The county sent me a certificate in the mail. Official minor architectural feature. Zone protected erosion barrier. I framed it. The HOA, now under new leadership, had undergone what the newspapers called a necessary purge. Gone were the fines for mailbox flag color, the threats about holiday inflatables of excessive size, and the random middle-of-the-night yard inspections. They even changed their slogan from "community through order" to mind neighbors, not enforcers. Progress. One weekend, I got a package from Michael. No note, just a single object wrapped in bubble wrap. Karen's former HOA nameplate. President Henderson engraved in elegant brass. I stared at it for a while before placing it next to the owl statue, half buried in the mulch like an artifact from a lost civilization. I've been asked if I miss the chaos. I don't. But there is one thing I do miss. The look on Karen's face the moment her front bumper met 600 pounds of rebar-reinforced poetic justice. Eric, ever the artist, suggested we commemorate it. That's how the neighborhood got its newest annual tradition. Shortcut Day. It started small. A few neighbors came over with folding chairs and snacks. Eric set up a tiny projector and played a slowed-down version of Karen's Crash, complete with dramatic music and captions like, "When entitlement meets engineering." Kids loved it. Someone brought shirts. By year 2, it had a food truck, a themed obstacle course, and a bake-off where entries had to be shaped like bushes. This year, Captain wore a tiny reflective vest that said "Lawn Enforcement." I gave him an extra burger for his years of emotional support. As the sun set over Shortcut Day, Eric stood beside me, arms crossed. "Think she'll ever come back?" I sipped my beer. Not unless her new alias can survive a Google search. He nodded. Still, you have to admit, if she does try anything again… I smiled. The bush remembers. And it does. Every camera still works. Every sensor still lives under the soil. The stone owl still perches, silent and wise, a passive guardian of private property and personal boundaries. So if one day someone decides to challenge the lawn again, to shortcut justice, to skirt the rules, to try and bend the world around their ego, they'll find the bush waiting, just like last time.